researching dog breeds online and you see something and think, what's that about? Well, that happened to me the other day. I saw this term, Cane Corso, and I thought, wow, that sounds kind of intense, doesn't it? Like something you'd only find in, Game of Thrones or something.
Right. It's definitely attention grabbing.
Yeah, so today we're going to do a deep dive on this whole Cane Corso thing as a way to look at, responsible dog breeding in general.
That's a really interesting angle because it brings up a lot of questions about, how trends in dog breeding can have these unintended consequences, even when they seem harmless at first glance.
Okay, so let's break this down. First of all, for anyone who's not a, dog show judge or whatever, what is a Cane Corso?
So the Cane Corso, it's an Italian breed. It's a Mastiff. They were originally bred to be guard dogs, so
Yeah.
they're big and strong,
Yeah.
and they definitely have that, impressive presence.
Okay, so we're talking big dogs here, but what makes a Cane Corso different? Like, is it a totally separate breed or what?
Well, that's the thing. It's not. There's no official breed standard for a Cane Corso. It's more like a term that some breeders use.
No, I see, like a marketing thing. To make
Yeah.
it sound more, special.
Yeah, it's all about making it sound more exclusive or rare. So a standard male Cane Corso typically weighs, what would you say, maybe 99 to 110 pounds.
Actually, that's a good sized dog already.
Right. But Cane Corsos, they're often advertised as being 150 pounds or even more.
Whoa. Okay, so like significantly bigger.
Yeah, and that's a huge difference when you think about it in terms of, the actual animal.
I can definitely see the appeal, though, right? I mean, I love big dogs, and if someone told me there was a king-size version, it might pique my interest.
And that's smart marketing for you. It taps into this very basic human desire for, things that are bigger, stronger, rarer.
So it's almost like they're selling an image or an idea even more than, an actual dog.
Exactly. And that's where things get a little bit ethically murky because on the one hand, you could say it's just, a bit of harmless exaggeration.
Yeah. Like saying a dog is rare when it's just a, slightly different shade of brown or something.
Yeah, exactly. But on the other hand, you're dealing with people's emotions and potentially their wallets.
Because I'm guessing a Cane Corso probably comes with a king-size price tag, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can expect to pay a hefty premium for that King label, even if the dog itself isn't that much different from a standard Cane Corso.
So it's almost like this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. You create this aura of exclusivity and then you charge more for it, even if there's not really any, tangible difference.
That's a great way to put it. And it's something to be aware of anytime you're, looking at different breeds or even just different breeders within a breed.
Because it really highlights how important it is to work with breeders who are, ethical and responsible.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the Cane Corso trend is really just one example of a much larger issue in the dog breeding world where profit often overshadows the long-term health and well-being of the animals.
So it's like sometimes we forget that we're talking about, living creatures here, not just, designer accessories. And that makes me think about the whole, health aspect. Because if you're breeding dogs to be extra large, are there, potential health risks that come with that?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge issue and one that often gets overlooked in, the quest for a certain look or aesthetic.
Right. So we're talking about more than just, a dog being a little bit uncomfortable. We're talking about actual, long-term health problems.
Exactly. When you breed any dog for exaggerated traits, whether it's size or coat or, even facial structure, it can have all these unintended consequences. And in the case of giant breeds or, dogs that are bred to be bigger than what's considered healthy for their breed, you see a lot of problems with their joints.
Makes sense. The bigger they are, the more stress on their bones and joints.
Exactly. So one of the most common things you see in larger dogs is hip dysplasia.
And just so everyone's on the same page, could you explain what that is?
Sure. So basically, hip dysplasia is when the hip joint doesn't develop properly. And that can lead to, pain, lameness, arthritis. It can really impact the dog's quality of life.
Oh, definitely. And I imagine that's even worse if the dog is, carrying around a lot of extra weight.
Exactly. The heavier the dog, the more stress on those joints. So that, Cane Corso physique that some people find so impressive, that can actually be really detrimental to the dog's health in the long run.
It's like the opposite of what you'd think. You think bigger is stronger, but really it can be the opposite.
Right. It's important to remember that we're talking about living beings, not, action figures.
So besides hip dysplasia, what else should people be aware of when it comes to larger breed health?
Well, joint problems in general are a big one.
Mm.
Elbow dysplasia is another one you see a lot. It's similar to hip dysplasia, but affects the elbow joint. And then there are things like cruciate ligament injuries, which can be really painful and often require surgery. Those are much more common in heavier dogs, too.
Wow, it's kind of sad when you think about it. These dogs are being bred for their size, but that size could actually lead to a lot of pain and suffering.
It's true, and it really highlights the importance of responsible breeding practices.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What does it actually mean to be a responsible breeder?
It's about so much more than just, making puppies. A responsible breeder is thinking about the health and temperament and, longevity of the entire breed. They're not just trying to make a quick buck, they're trying to preserve the best qualities of the breed.
So it's almost like a form of, conservation in a way.
Exactly. And it's something that more people need to be aware of.
So for someone who's maybe, new to all of this and they're thinking about getting a Cane Corso, what are some red flags to look out for? How can they tell if a breeder is, ethical or not?
That's a great question, and it's something that every potential dog owner should be thinking about.
Hmm.
So first and foremost, be wary of breeders who are overly focused on size. If their whole website is all about, Cane Corsos or giant Cane Corsos or how massive their dogs are, that's a big red flag.
So basically, if they're using those kinds of buzzwords to sell the dogs.
Exactly. A responsible breeder is going to be focused on adhering to the breed standard.
And what is the breed standard exactly?
It's basically like a blueprint for the breed. It outlines the ideal physical and temperamental traits that you want to see in a Cane Corso.
So it's not just about looks, it's about temperament too.
Right. You want a dog that is, healthy and well-adjusted and able to be a good companion.
So it's about finding that balance between preserving what makes the breed unique, but also making sure that the dogs are, healthy and happy.
Exactly. It's about the big picture.
So it's kind of like those breed standards are there to protect the dogs in a way, right? To make sure that people aren't just, breeding them willy-nilly without any regard for their health or well-being.
Exactly. It's about protecting the integrity of the breed for future generations. If all we cared about was size, we could end up with dogs that are in constant pain or have really short lifespans.
Right. It's about the big picture, not just the immediate gratification of having a dog that looks a certain way.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because it's a responsibility that falls on all of us. Not just breeders, but also people who are thinking about getting a dog.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm convinced I want a Cane Corso. What should their next step be?
Well, the first thing I always recommend is to do your research. And I don't just mean, Googling Cane Corso puppies for sale.
Right, because anyone can make a website these days.
Exactly. You want to go to a reputable source. So for Cane Corso specifically, I would recommend checking out the Cane Corso Association of America.
And I'm guessing they have a website and all that?
Yeah, they have a ton of information on their website about the breed standard. They also have a list of breeders who are members in good standing, which means they've agreed to adhere to certain ethical guidelines.
No, that's really good to know. So it's like a stamp of approval from, the people who know the breed best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another great resource is, going to dog shows.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can actually see the dogs in person.
Right. And meet the breeders and talk to people who know the breed really well.
It's like firsthand experience rather than just, looking at pictures online.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, I know we've talked a lot about, finding a responsible breeder, but I also wanted to mention the option of rescuing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There are so many wonderful dogs out there who are looking for homes.
Absolutely. And sometimes people have this idea that rescue dogs are, damaged goods or something.
Yeah, like they must have something wrong with them if they ended up in a shelter.
Right. But that's not true at all. There's so many reasons why a dog might end up in rescue.
Yeah.
And often it has nothing to do with the dog itself and everything to do with, the circumstances of their previous owner.
Exactly. So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about rescuing a Cane Corso specifically?
Well, the same advice I'd give to anyone who's thinking about rescuing any dog. Be open-minded, be patient, and most importantly, be prepared to put in the work.
Because every dog is different.
Exactly. They all come with their own unique personalities and quirks, but honestly, that's part of the joy of it,
Yep.
Getting to know a dog and helping them to blossom.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So to kind of bring things to a close, is there any, final thought you'd want to leave with our listeners?
I guess what I say is this. Bringing a dog into your life is a big decision. It's a commitment, but it's also one of the most rewarding things you can do. So if you're thinking about getting a Cane Corso or any dog, really, please do your research. Find a reputable breeder or rescue organization, and most importantly, be prepared to give that dog the love and care they deserve.
That's such great advice. It's about so much more than just, picking the cutest puppy in the litter. It's about making a responsible choice that's good for you and good for the dog.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise. It's been so insightful.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the fascinating world of dogs.